Small. Wow, tiny.
You are currently listening to Tiny Table,
where we explore TTRPGs you might not have heard of.
Whether big or small, we hope to cover them all.
Because we know that great things can come in tiny packages.
Hello and welcome to Tiny Table, where no game is too small. From rules to rollings to review, we teach RPGs so you can play too. And today, I am very excited to invite to the show Wendi Yu, the designer and writer of Here, There, Be Monsters. Thank you so much for joining us today, Wendi.
Yippee!
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Before we dive into the interview questions, do you want to give us just a little intro about yourself?
My name is Wendi Yu. I'm from Northeast Brazil, and I currently am studying a PhD in Culture and Communication Studies. I don't like saying I'm a game designer, but I make stuff with words and images, and sometimes those take the form of games. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you find them interesting.
That we did. It was an absolute delight getting to run and play and discuss Here, There, Be Monsters, and we're very excited to ask you about it today. So I'll dive into our first question. The core of this book is its robust list of 100 different monster backgrounds, which inspire exciting different player characters. What was the process like creating such a gargantuan list of options? Do any stand out as particular favorites of yours?
Oof. Yeah. I blame Chris McDowell for making it seem so easy. But as anything I write, really, it was a torture. At first I had trouble filling the list, and suddenly I had to put more of the training. And then writing and editing each one of them. But the game needed it for exploring the things it wanted to explore. Like, each of the backgrounds explores a different aspect of monstrosity as marginalization and monstrosity and marginalization. By being an actual monster archetype and or by representing a specific aspect that I wanted players to and readers to interface with. Actually, that's something that's important to me. I always want the game to be a complete experience for readers as well. Like, even if a different experience from playing it, but a complete experience. Like, I don't think I'd ever be able to make like a good lyrical game stuff, but like, I once wrote a lyrical dungeon room once in a lab with Monroe and other trans friends, and it was one of the best games writing I've ever done in terms of the writing, but I don't think it's a very good dungeon room in itself. But I think my point is that every game can be lyrical by itself, right? So that was something important to me as well, that the backgrounds, there's so many backgrounds, and they're all written in a certain way to build an experience about monstrosity and as marginalization and explore all the different aspects of it. And also to showcase how much freedom you have to build your characters. I love the Brazilian ones, of course, and the sillier ones, like the bunch of goblins in a beekeeper suit, and like the brain in the jar. And for some reason, there's a retired football player in there, which is a very common archetype. But I also love that there's a drag queen in there. And I think the ones I love the most personally, and people seem to agree when they talk to me about the game, are the possessed person and the werewolf.
Neo played a possessed character as one of our three. One of the three we picked was possessed.
I had to choose between that and werewolf, and I've already played werewolf too many times.
See, I think the writing was able to resonate with a lot of people, and I think the questions conveyed a certain kind of experience that a lot of people were able to identify with, even if they came from my personal experiences. I think that's why I personally love them, and why a lot of people love them, because they were some of the most personal to me. And there's this thing, when things come from a very personal place, they can be more universal. So I would choose those two, I think. What did you think of the Possessed?
I loved it. I had a great time, and I think it's a great like monstrous quality, right? You're being possessed by a foreign entity, which, you know, there are plenty of themes and real life experiences that can resonate with, and it creates it. You also get to have the fun of being two characters in one body as well.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed, and I like your possessed character has magic maybe, but you don't. I love that explicit dichotomy. I think that's like really saucy for character writing. I think it was very generative.
We had a lovely time. I love the prompt in The Possessed where someone else at the table writes the tags for the possession. We shared it around because there were three of us. There were three tags. It felt right that we would each contribute a tag, and like in totality, it led to a possessed character that was just delightful. Like that when the possessed character like came to the forefront, the character's head would turn around 180 degrees, and like all their like the limbs, like the joints would unhinge the sockets, and then they could like climb the walls and open their chest cavity to retrieve things from it. Like a level of
calling
like,
that delightful is very funny.
Yeah. Oh, my heart and soul, my favorite little guy. But we wouldn't have had the opportunity to have such a delightful, such a like zany character idea if it had been limited to like, all right, come up with two things all by yourself. So like that prompting, you know, the totality of the possessed character is what, like 7 lines of text. It's a couple sentences long because you have to be efficient with your space on the page when you're writing 100 different entries. Yeah, so like I can imagine that the process of winnowing down all of this evocative, you know, the nature of these monsters into like a really tight paragraph for each one was a torturous experience.
It was, yeah. But also, I really had a clear idea of what I wanted to do. So it was easy to know what was gonna stay, and I didn't want to be prescriptive. So the questions, I was more interested in asking questions than in giving instructions.
I love the questions, right? Each thing is, do you do this? What about this? How did you get this way? Really great prompting.
Yeah, it sets players up to create and embody their character with specific themes in mind rather than telling them who their character is. It allows for a level of freedom and player interaction, which I think is really important because honestly, one of my favorite parts was getting to give Neo a British little freak who can climb up walls, and get to like influence that like live at the table during our first session of play, like coming up with the fun little tags and doing all of the little interactive elements to sort of influence one another's characters. Really, I think made them bond closer together when they all came, as a whole unit. And so I think having prompts as part of the process of explaining what or who a monster is, or rather it explains what they could be, which I think is important to what seems to be both the ethos of the game and also to player like interaction and how they engage with the system.
Yeah, it was really important to me that you said embodiment, and I think that's it. It was really important to me that players had this feeling of embodiment of their characters. and had this experience of monstrosity at that level. So interfacing with that at that level was very important to me. I think the questions are supposed to give that kind of conscious interrogation of those aspects.
Yeah, exactly. And we really noticed that while reading that queer identity and revolutionary zeal lies at the heart of Here There Be Monsters. A prior game that we've played, Eureka Investigative Urban Fantasy, centered on the theme of monstrosity as disability. How does your game engage with the theme of monstrosity as queerness, racialization, and transsexuality?
I'm dying to read and play Eureka soon. Everything I've seen of it feels like they come to very different places through very different avenues, but kind of like with very similar design sensibilities and ideological questions as myself.
I would completely agree.
The examination of the same genre, so I'm pretty curious about it. I hope I can play it and read it soon.
Your games are very interestingly in conversation with each other, because I would say Eureka is way more simulationist, very crunchy, really appeals to people that are looking for that crunch. And your game has a bit more of a rules light approach, and I think more of a narrative focus in the way of you're winning because you have used these narrative tools rather than you have expertly strung together the mechanics.
Rather than you have a minor in mathematics and can.
Yeah, but I think from what I've seen of it, I follow them on Tumblr. They seem to approach the crunch with similar design sensibilities with which I approach the rules light space, I think, and with similar ideological concerns, I think. But going back to your question, I think this game is about marginalized bodies as monstrous bodies. And that's something that lots of authors have dealt with before. So there's this famous essay by Susan Stryker that I use as an epigraph. There's a whole book by Jack Halberson called Skin Shows that's all about it, where he says that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that the monster is a trash can for the abject refuse of humanity. Judith Butler says that the monster is a liminal figure, this awesome, all-inspiring figure that follows every definition of the human. I think that's the most important thing about monsters. They demonstrate, that's the root of the word, they demonstrate the limit of what's human. They are not a thing in itself, but they are something that is not something. They are not human. So they end up showing us how the definition of what a person is malleable. It's historically constructed and violently constructed. They are not the opposite of human. They're the failure of the human, the failure of human categories, and how horrifying that is for human categories to fail. Monsters were used in early navigation maps to indicate the places you shouldn't go. Here there be monsters, it's dangerous, do not venture. Right? And it's the same everywhere else. Monsters were used to describe the bodies of living things that did not fit the taxonomical categories, like hybrids or excessive things, with more than the expected amount of limbs, or transgressive things like bearded women or babies with two heads. For example, the book begins and ends with two images from the same 16th century catalog of anomalies, like a harpy, which is a actual quote unquote monster from mythology, and a hermaphrodite, right? So there's this power that monstrosity possesses. I think the idea of quote unquote normal, that which passes for just the way things are, creates monsters out of certain bodies. So that's what this game is about. Monstrosity as marginalization of certain bodies. But it's also about claiming this monstrosity, right?
Yeah.
Like not trying to be human or normal, or not trying to fit into these violent categories that were never made for certain bodies, but destroying them so that no one has to be anything, so that anyone can become anything and go anywhere without being afraid of the monsters.
Yeah, we kind of noted that in our post-mortem, that the rules kind of support that. There's a mechanical and narrative sort of synchronicity where if you lean into your 6 traits, if you lean into the things that make you a monster, that make you a freak and a weirdo, you're going to get a dice advantage. You're going to more likely succeed on the things that you are doing because you are leaning into that nature. So it's cool to see that ethos literally supported by mechanical empowerment of the player's actions.
I mean, I don't really understand how someone could make a game and try and separate aspects of it, like mechanics and themes, mechanics and lore, and mechanics and plot, because you're making a whole thing. So every single aspect of the game is saying something, whether you like it or not, whether you intended to or not. So yeah. So that's it. I think the monster is constructed inside these norms of what is right, of what is human, and so they can show how these norms are fallible. They are not natural certainties. They are not the way things are. So claiming this monstrosity is reminding people that natural is itself the cultural and historical formation, and can be very powerful. I think that's the point that the game tries to make, and I think that's what its relationship with queerness, race, transsexuality.
I love that you are really considering mechanics and narrative, that they're not separate items, that they are cohesive together. And I really think that comes through in your magic system. The magic system of Here There Be Monsters exists in 2 parts, magic words and wagers. What inspired this dual system, and what iterations did it go through in design? What inspired this forked approach to magic and spells? What are you narratively saying by splitting magic into these core words and these wagers?
Okay, first of all, I hate magic system. I absolutely hate magic system. I think it's the most white European colonial, narrow, simplistic view of the world. To take something wonderful that you don't comprehend and try and make it fit a tiny little model of reality, to like take something magic and make it behave just like science, right? We needed to have magic in this game, and we needed to systematize it so players could use it. So the compromise, the best compromise I could come up with was this, that magic is literally playing dice with the universe, right? It's a gamble. If you're willing to give enough, sacrifice enough, maybe you get something resembling what you want, but you surely will be transformed by the experience. Anyways, because it is magic. It's bending reality, right? It is unknown. So the thing is, we needed to also systematize easier stuff for people who are like more experienced, more powerful, or had like specific powers, like the fire starter who uses magic but with only the word fire. They still have a wild element to it, but they're basically cheating. The wordplay element is basically the mechanized way of portraying how they're trying to convince the universe they don't need that much of a wager. They're fast talking the universe, basically. That's why I chose wordplay. They are cheating at the table of playing dice with the universe using their words. It's in the root of the word spell, right? It's a spell. You're spelling things. It really is with the same root. Alan Moore talks a lot about it. Like grimoire and grammar have also the same root and stuff like that. So it's still dangerous. It's still wild. It's still random. But they have some level of control. But only when using that word. In a way, I think that's kind of what we do with reality itself. We tame it a little bit with language to fit their needs. Like, for example, there's a wide variety of sexual characteristics, either in genitalia or secondary sexual characteristics or genetics or behaviors or whatever, but we cheat. And we say the two most common groups of all those things are the two that are actual sexes, because it would be harder to fit our model of reality if it wasn't. And then we use that spell to make things work within that model of reality, right? So in a way, that's how language works, and that's how language allows those users to cheat the main quote-unquote magic system of the game. I hope I'm not being too...
No, this is why we do these interviews, is to get that we're at the good stuff.
Yeah, this is the good
Yeah,
stuff.
it's really thought-provoking.
I feel like Skylar really got, because he played a magic using character, really got a lot out of this kind of fast talking the universe angle.
Yeah.
You were really
so-
using those words in funny ways. At one point, the change thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it is funny hearing you say, like, casting a spell is like fast talking the universe, because for the first few instances, I'm, casting spells, like, trying to do a little bit of wordplay, but mostly using the words as intended. Like, I used, my words were like change, fire, and void. And so early on, I used void to avoid us being noticed and turn us invisible, to make us void, to make us empty, blah, blah, blah. And, it's very fun, very cool, but still like pretty within the themes of what that meant. And then later on, I introduced like, oh, my character goes on a little side quest, he buys some cupcakes, and he pays for it with like all nickels and dimes and quarters and all this stuff. And like, he has just enough money to get it. And as he's walking out of the store, he puts his hand into his coin purse, and I cast change, using the word change to make money for myself, to make small change, as like a rule to like cheat myself $20 day to day. And that's like how he's been getting by for like, these hundreds of years or whatever, is paying everything in small change by fast talking the universe that he should get money through it. So it's funny hearing you say that, and then having that be the actuality of our play, just like through, the happenstance. It really, that element I think instantly comes through, because as soon as you limit what players can do with a magic system like this, you're only going to get 1 to 4 words. It immediately forces them to like spark creativity if they want to get any use out of it at all. So they kind of do have to be con men with their magic if they want it to succeed.
That's exactly what I had in mind. And this also comes from my experience as a player of trying to convince the GM or DM or ref or whatever that whatever I was trying to do was plausible, right? And that was always really fun for me.
Yeah, and it's such a wellspring of fun. It naturally kind of overlaps in the core approach to Magic as the prior community submission game we played, which was Broke Wizards, which is coming at it in a similar way. The limiter there is not the words you can use, but the component you cast your spell with. But both systems construct their notion of magic not around a prescribed list of spells, but around the notion that you do need to kind of crack wise and talk fast with fate to convince existence to allow this magic to occur. And I love that we've now played multiple of these systems that have taken this natural form of emergent player behavior that happens in so many systems, the like playing Mother May I with the referee, and has made that explicitly like in the text part of the system as opposed to just this implied folk practice. So we had a huge amount of fun with this magic system.
And that's one of the origins of this game as a whole. When I was like a teenager, it was like my white whale to adapt the World of Darkness to a different system because I hated this. I don't know, there's something with my brain that cannot make sense of this extent. And also, I loved Mage the Ascension, but I hated playing Mage the Ascension. And I think something about Mage the Ascension's approach to magic in its lore, not in its mechanics, but in what it was saying about magic that didn't translate to its mechanics, got to me, and I spent like years in my teenage years trying to make it work in different systems that were like trying to make a hack for it with different systems. It never worked. So I think it also was a way of like making a magic system that was actually made the Ascension the way I would like it to be.
That's awesome. I mean,
That's very cool.
I feel like that's how we all start, right? We want to interpret something. We want to make it our own. We're like, I love this material or concept, but I hate how it works, so I'm going to make my own. And you've really captured something quite special.
With that, very early on in the question, you kind of talked about, how it is kind of like a gamble. You're playing dice with the universe. And though it never occurred in our play, we realized that it's very possible for permanent and ugly changes to afflict the characters of this system. Magic, again, can be fueled with the sacrifices of a character's core aspects, and conditions can lead to grisly changes if too many get stacked on top of one another. We would love to hear your thoughts on this narrativist approach to fail states. What informed it, and what does it tend to provoke at the table?
I think the game itself says it better than I could here. Like, do what you want, deal with the consequences, right? Dying is easy, I think. You just roll another character and move on. Dealing with lasting consequences for your actions with a character you've become attached to, with relationships that matter to you, that's way more interesting to me. Once again, that's pretty much because I want the players to care about a certain embodied experience and about these characters' place and relationships in the world so they can explore the game's themes. I don't know if I would call it narrativistic, I feel the weight of the consequences sometimes feel pretty OSR, except without that much death. But it surely comes from playing a lot of like Faith Core in my teens and early 20s and having like a love and hate relationship with it and trying to figure out why, and also like playing lots and lots of Cthulhu games and preferring to have my character go quote unquote insane than dying, because that's what the game was about, right? Not dying, but knowing too much and going insane because of it. That was the thing of the game. So,
funnily enough, I actually paralleled those two mechanics in our post-mortem because we played Call of Cthulhu, almost a year ago. We played Call of Cthulhu, and we noticed that we felt like we were missing a core part of the game because we can only, play short form, just due to the nature of the podcast. And so our characters were never going to actually go insane and then have to face those consequences. And we were talking about maybe we didn't have any huge lasting conditions. And that's probably such a core aspect of the game. And we really recommended people try to play long form campaigns of Here There Be Monsters to really play with these fail states, because it seems like the math is in the player's favors, but when it's not, it's not.
Ooh.
yeah, but it's also not in a certain way, right? Like, Trophy Dark was a big influence on me now. It is a masterpiece of how the mechanics interface with what the game is trying to say, and you play to die, right? So everything is connected to it. So even if the whole world is against you, it still is in favor of the specific experience that you are playing to get, right? So in a game, every mechanical choice is something, as I said, either if you want it or not. I didn't want to have a combat system, for example, because I didn't want it to be a combat-oriented game. But this doesn't mean that this is not a dangerous world. It is. So if you do something that would result in you getting shot, you will get shot. Even if you can deal with that consequence, it will still happen. That's why Magic has its own system, because unlike combat, which is not its own special kind of violence, it's just violence. Magic is its own unique part of this universe, right? So it had to have its own unique mechanics. And the way you can sacrifice your own tags, for example, was a way of giving consequences mechanically and portraying the seriousness of making a big sacrifice for a big result. And it's fun, and also when it happens you can feel the weight of that choice. You're giving away something that really matters, both mechanically and through your character, right? So it's all about what the mechanics are saying, because the mechanics are the game, and the game is a whole thing.
I love that. Speaking of the whole of games, that'll get us on to our final question here for the first half of our interview. As always, if you are listening to this now, you can find part 2 of this interview, where we will dive deeper with more in-depth questions on the micro tier of our Patreon. To get into our final, your prior works, speaking of whole games, you have 2 that you've published on your itch.io before this: Apotheosis Janitors and Marvelous Mutations and Merry Musicians. And both of them position themselves in the wake of something. Janitors is post-apotheosis, Marvelous Mutations is post-apocalyptic. Do you feel that Here There Be Monsters is unique from your other works in this regard, or is it also post-something? How did the creations of your earlier games inspire your work on this game, and what is next in your creative endeavors?
It's funny I never have thought of it that way, but it's a great insight. It's funny that you word it that way, in the wake of something, because I have just finished reading Christina Sharp's In the Wake, so maybe there's something in there. Anyways, Apotheosis Janitors was my first game. It's a small game, and I think it needed a clear starting point, a clear inciting incident, because it's almost like an anti-heist, right? It's a much more contained game in that sense. Marvelous Mutations is about the future, but in the sense, as all things about the future, it's about now. It's about how we can try and imagine a post-capitalist world, and even try and imagine other kinds of post-apocalypse media. And Here There Be Monsters, first of all, I think Here There Be Monsters is post these two games. I always say that it is the game I wanted to make first, but I couldn't have done it before the others. It was only by making them that I found out what I was capable of. And so it was much more urgent because it deals with things that were really important to me and that I was really passionate about. And it is about now. So in that sense, it's also about the future, about surviving and fighting for something else. But I think all of those games have in common that I take things that I like genres and archetypes and common stuff, like Apotheosis Janitors deals it with codes and heist games. Marvelous Mutations deals with road trips, road movies, and bands, and post-apocalyptic media, and weird, gonzo, colorful games. And then Here There Be Monsters with urban fantasy and all of the influences that I cite, like the World of Darkness, the SCP Foundation, the Hellboy. I take that and I try to examine why I like it and also why it works, but also how it holds this system that I don't like, how I can make it work for me and for people like me and make it something else, something mine. So my next game, for example, that I have no idea when it's going to be out, I know it's going to be a series of zines that are all modular, and you just need the one-page pamphlet to play the game, but then there's going to be like 6 to 8 zines, and you can pick and choose what you want. And Evelyn Moreau is with me in this, and it is during an apocalypse, but it is an apocalypse that is after multiple others, so it's about the eternal return of this end, and it is also then about now living through multiple apocalypses. And it is a response to Lovecraft and Cthulhu games. And it is also me trying to work through the trauma of having played a certain Cthulhu meets Evangelion game in my teens. I don't know if you've heard of that game, but there's lots of sexual assault in the lore, and that leads to not great playing experiences. And it's a game that's really personal to me because that's me trying to work through lots of trauma, and it's also a response to Lovecraft and the hold that his creations have on weird fiction and on me, because weird fiction is a hugely important part of who I am. So how do I deal with it? So I think the common thread of all of those things is me trying to understand the things that are part of who we are in a system that doesn't really allow us to be who we are. How can we deal with that and make it so they are not toxic to our existence? And beyond that, how can they be transformative and work toward freedom?
Well, thank you so much, Wendi, for joining us for this first half of our interview. We are over the moon at these levels of insights. It is very clear you are currently in a PhD on communications, because I am loving all of your thoughts on language and, kind of the stacking layers of meaning that rides beneath the core of any piece of art or communication. We will be diving even deeper on these themes and more on the second half of our interview, which you can find on our Patreon on the micro tier. Wendi, before we go, anything you want to shout out that you want to put people's eyes on?
First, thank you for the great questions. I feel getting smarter by the level of intelligence of the questions that you asked. So thank you so much for thinking through the game. That's really important to me. And first shout out, play games by trans and black and queer creators. Anything, and give us money. And
True.
You can, I don't have anything in the works right now, like ready to launch, but I'm working on a horror novella and a new game that I talked about. And you can find me in my H-Star and Blue Sky, and I have a card page, wendiu.card.co, card with 2 R's, and wendiu.itch.io. So play this game. It's nice.
It's great.
Yeah, get Here There Be Monsters. It fucking rules. You will be able to find all of those links in the episode description, of course. Please go and support Wendi on her Itch.io page. I never know if to call it Itch or Itch.io. I don't know. But go to that itchy scratchy game store and buy all of her awesome stuff. So with all that, thank you so much for joining us today, Wendi. And 3, 2, 1, communism!
Bye-bye.
Hi, and thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then we'd really appreciate if you left us a review. If you really like what we do here and want to support us further, you can join us at patreon.com/tinytablepodcast. Our business email is also open for inquiries at tinytablebusiness@gmail.com, and all of our socials can be found in the episode description for any shenanigans you might want to follow. Till next time, see ya!